game one.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Frontline is a team that can have a chance here against the Sonics. Of course, looking at who they've played so far, how they've gotten to this point, there's not a stellar case to be made for this team. But look, they're here. They're one series away from making it to the final bracket, and this Sonics team is beatable for Frontline. They really do have to bring their A game here in this series.
And you heard Gibbs talk about it on the desk. These three players on Frontline, no one with even rival series experience or starting experience. You have Andy, who I think played a little bit, but I don't think he started Corelli.
No, he was a sub for Stromboli.
Yeah, subbed, but didn't play at all. So this is his first starting role in an RLCS team. And Beastabonium, I've seen his name before. I've watched him play a couple of times. I believe it was Fusion the last time I saw Beastabonium. I like what he brought to the table. Very one of the speedier players coming out from the bottom, but Frontline, well, they've started in their own half, and they've kept the ball away for now from the Sonics. But Shock, he's coming forward as Safi was screening across for a demo, and we're taking turns at the net for Sonics. A slow but methodical approach. Demo on the backside, nothing materializing for Sonics, but maybe an open net for Shock as he rolls. Oh no, Beastabonium recovers and gets the save. Frontline holding down the back line, moving to the blue half.
What you're probably going to see, hold on a second, Delta, you're going to see a goal for Team Frontline after a lot of defense coming out in the beginning.
Yeah, that quick transition, Andy got a hard touch, and Shock, he wasn't ready for it. Shock was expecting it to roll across the corner, and it was good recognition by Andy to just go for the harder, powerful touch.
That was a shame, too, I think, for Sonics. If you're the Sonics, this is not a good start. After all that pressure, look, they have 4 shots right off the bat, but a lot of them were not on target. I mean, they had some clean chances on net that were uncontested that they couldn't put up into the back of the net. So for the Sonics, this is a bit of a disaster start. Even with that early pressure, you really have to score your chances when you're given so many right off the rip.
And we've seen it from Sonics today. When they're given consistent pressure, they don't have the best on-the-field communication, at least as it appears from up here. When they have double commits or they're struggling to get hard clears, when they're being pressed by a team, that's when they really have trouble breaking out. I feel like J. Russ, hang on a second, Shock has to pick up the save, and the demo on Beastabonium will give the space back to Sonics.
One thing that I was going to point out before Frontline had scored that early goal was that you're probably going to see a lot of this early pressure from the Sonics. This is a team that has at least one season of RLCS under their belt, and even with the addition of J-Russ, the Sonics have really never missed a beat. Even after their kind of abysmal offseason, they've really picked it back up with J-Russ. And so you're probably going to see Frontline have to adapt to this Sonics offense at the moment. They're doing a good job of hanging in there, obviously keeping them scoreless. That first goal is going to do wonders for them here in game one as they get warmed up to the speed of the Sonics.
Now, Sonics have really struggled past the opening minute to pressure Frontline. Frontline now in midfield, they get nothing out of it. A lot of demos on both sides. Andy faking past J-Russ, but J-Russ, he wasn't faked. He was merely repositioning Beastabonium. Next up here for Team Frontline. Good ball by Shock. Delta got up as well, and it's just a slow rotation, but on the far side, Delta's waiting. He missed the ball, but Beastabonium had a chance. Tough to get around the angle, jumped a little early. Does this continue for Frontline? Andy will steal the boost. Beastabonium, the ball. Delta, he's going to screen across here, but for the most part, the Sonics haven't really felt too threatened in front of the box. Andy, the corner, it's just stretching Sonic's ability to clear the ball in the corners. They're trying to win this battle of attrition, Corelli, but they're struggling to get some quality shots right now.
Frontline really returning the favor after that first minute or so from the Sonics pressure. Now it's them who have all the offense, but not too many dangerous shots, as Delta might get a second touch here, but Frontline definitely picking up the pace and looking better and better. They put up 9 shots here so far to the Sonics 4.
Sonics, a brief stint in the orange half, but Team Frontline, Delta, ends up just dumping the ball downfield. Andy went for that demo, and Beastabonium got caught. The third man blown apart, and that will be a goal for Sonics.
That's a tough one there for Beastabonium. He's the last man back, and really the last man to make anything happen for the defense. Really needed to at least get a touch on that ball, and that hit was actually so well struck there. by the Sonics to get that one so high with that power to not hit the ceiling. And that last man just couldn't get up in time.
It's been a tough road for the Sonics today. They started out with a loss in 5 games to the Pioneers. They had a 5-game set just now against version 1. And their other 2 sets went 4 games with Rogue and Continuum. It's been a very long day for the Sonics, and that will take its toll on most teams. Delta, high ball for Andy, but defense has looked solid for Sonics. They've prevented a lot of shots on net despite the pressure from Frontline. They might have a press here. Sathu on top of the ball against Delta. J-Russ, does he have another angle? No, Andy gets a long, high, slow clear, and we are in overtime.
I don't think a lot of people would have expected this. I think they would have thought at least in game 1, Sonics would come out hot, and they did. They just didn't finish the ball, and now they're paying the price, find themselves in an overtime against the Frontline team, who definitely up to par here against this Sonics team.
Well, across for Sathu. J-Russ. Oh, J-Russ comes down off the post, but Andy got the catch and the flick up. What does this mean for Team Frontline, though? They've been unable to shoot the ball in front of the box all game. They've been able to get to these corners, but that's about it. Delta, he'll find a shot, but Shock close and away. Beast of Bonium pass to Andy, high off a Shock, but he couldn't grab it. J-Russ has to take it, and the ball straight back into the corner again. Sonics holding on defense, but for how long? Beast of Bonium, he looked for the interception. Instead, it's a clear back over to Shock from J-Russ, and nothing develops. It feels like some of these passes are gonna find their way.
Oh, J-Russ with
Frontline are in trouble! J-Russ off the crossbar! Sonics will take overtime in game 1.
Just as soon as you said it, Jorby, nothing happened. How about a flip reset from J-Russ up and over 2 of them? And that's what this guy was brought on to do for the Sonics. Ignite the offense with mechanical plays like that. And J-Russ does a fantastic job of putting game 1 to bed.
And J-Russ is... watching J-Russ play lately, it is impressive because I felt like he's been quiet lately, or at least the last few times we've seen Sonics when J-Russ got added to this roster. I felt like he didn't make the immediate impact that some may have expected, but this is a young player, young in terms of his experience at the RLCS level. The more he plays, the better he gets, and I feel like he's turned himself into an integral part of this Sonics roster, offense and defense.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, because the environment in the RLCS team setting is unlike any other. You can play ranked, you can play 6-mans, you can play with your teammates all day long, but when it comes to actually playing in the tournament setting with your teams, it's invaluable experience for someone like J-Russ to be on a team like Sonics, who do have that 1 season of RLCS experience under their belts coming into this season. The expectation is high for J-Russ, and I think right now, as we've moved on into these stages, he's starting to live up to that expectation.
Well, Team Frontline, at the start of game 1, they had to stop a flurry of shots from the Sonics. I thought they were about to take a goal to start the game, but you certainly don't think Team Frontline looked that bad with the pressure that they were able to mount. Here's a good pass, but a weak shot that may actually give Andy a goal, but no, the Sonics, while they flounder in front of their box, wondering where the next touch was gonna go, they do eventually get that touch out to the corner.
And he fooled that Sonics defense with that backflip initially, but couldn't get back around it. It was a really smart play, but in the end, just couldn't execute on that final touch needed towards the net.
Battle for midfield again. Frontline, they weren't able to crack past
my
defense in game 1, but game 2 might tell a different story. As somehow, some way, Corelli, how did Delta sneak this?
He just sneaks it by. J-Russ didn't really take a good look at it. Shock doesn't make contact, and Andy's waiting for the gift to roll across the goal line, taps it in for Frontline, and another 1-goal lead right in the beginning of game 2.
Sonics are hoping the VOD gets deleted of game 2. We don't need to see the start. But they're already back on offense off the kickoff. Good from Beast of Bonium, and breakaway for Andy. There it is, 2 for Team Frontline. Didn't take long.
And I like the decision making here from Andy. Even with this breakaway shot, you feel like everything's all wrapped up. But if you cut it back too far, Sathu might be able to get a touch on it, but he just hits it right into Sathu, and there's just no saving it. Sathu too far back in the end. And Andy with 2 goals, Frontline better for it. And they are putting the ball in the back of the net right now, and Sonics just can't seem to do that.
It'll be Shock. He knows he has to buy a little bit of time to allow Sathu to reset in midfield. And now Sathu, the next to buy more time for Soniqs. He'll do so, but not before Andy looks for a hard pass back to Beastabonium. He had to recover to get back to it, and his teammates demoed, and now he's racing back towards the box. He grabs the first touch, Andy grabs the second, but waiting in midfield is nobody because Andy grabbed the ball. Beastabonium in the air, but the ball never comes his way. Shock and Sathu carrying the ball back to the corner, but can they get the clear? Shock will find a hard clear met against Beastabonium.
I think this is going to be a great tell of what Frontline are really made of. Sitting here, game 2, up 2 goals so early with 3 minutes left. How do they keep this lead? How do they hold on to this lead against this Soniqs roster? Can they get another one? It'll really show us what this Frontline team is made of.
Rotation's solid right now for Soniqs on defense. Beastabonium and Shock, it's a scrum in the corner for the ball. Sathu able to shovel it out now for Shock. Taking the winger is J-Russ. Popped up first on the other side is Andy. A nice little carry to get it out of harm's way, but the demo creates space for Sathu. Beastabonium able to get out again. There's been a lot of close plays in both boxes, Corelli. Maybe another one here is 2 commit from the Soniqs. Delta sends it in front. Andy gonna wait for Shock. Can he get the read against him? He does. Delta still behind him. Beastabonium coming in against J-Russ. And it is just a fight for every single inch that the ball moves. It's another challenge. Finally, a long clear for Soniqs, but they still have yet to score with 2 minutes remaining in game 2.
And you're talking about the plays inside the box, Jorby, and you hit the nail on the head. This is a very cerebral game with these two teams right now, because both of them are sending a lot of pump fakes towards the box, a lot of fake shots, a lot of fake touches, and they're letting that ball just roll across the box a couple times. So you have to really be paying attention and reading that defender and have the right read on what they're going to do with it. Right now, Frontline are doing just a bit of a better job here, but Soniqs only able to mount 3 shots so far, maybe spending some time here in the offensive third. Can they break this Frontline defense?
There just hasn't been the opportunity for Soniqs. Their positioning, their second and third man have always sat a little farther back. So it's really hard for that first man to find an outlet pass out. And they're relying on rebounds or bad touches from Frontline to generate their opportunities. They haven't found the gaps that they needed to against Frontline. And now Frontline are back in their territory. Beastabonium up for the read. Shock takes it away again. Defense is great, but you already let 2 win, and you gotta find another great midfield stop from Andy.
It just feels like watching the defense of Soniqs is very disorganized right now. And maybe Frontline are just playing a bit faster than this Soniqs defense, because it feels like Frontline have the jump on them every single time. It's almost like immediate panic mode for Soniqs when Frontline get in that final third.
And those 2 quick goals that they got, or the quick follow-up goal rather, really just put there we go. There's that infield pass they were looking for. And they finally connect. Shock strikes the middle of the net.
And it really is about execution for Soniqs. Look, they've had a lot of setups here between this game and the last. It's about execution for them, putting that shot at least on target, make it tough for that defender to make a save. That was a perfect example of the execution that you'd want from the Soniqs, but they need more of that heading into the end of this game and even further.
Yeah, without the demos, the openings haven't been there. And there was a lot of them in game 1. Shock has made that touch at that spot for the last 4 or 5 attempts that Frontline have had at the net. He's just sat right in front of the box and he's like, yeah, I'll jump up and get the touch out to the corner. It's a great start, great touch for Shock, but Delta trying to keep it away from Sathu. He'll keep that first read, but nobody from Soniqs is in position for it. And so it just goes right back to Frontline. And just like that, Corelli, the series is all tied up.
And, you know, I mentioned it, 3 minutes left here in this game. We're going to find out what Frontline are really made of. And I think this was a great example of the potential that this team has. I mean, they held on to this lead in quite convincing fashion and really made Soniqs even earn their only goal that they had. Even though, you know, we're talking about execution and maybe it's not all there for Soniqs right now, but very impressed with Team Frontline, even more so than in their previous series. This is maybe one of their better series through the first 2 games, even though they lost that first game. They look very strong right now.
Yeah, midfield especially, you know, there was a couple of touches, not just that latest one from Andy in midfield that stopped some potential counterattacks for Soniqs. And no team plays developing for them are just because Frontline have, well, Corelli, they've mustered a good front line against Soniqs in game 2. If game 3 plays out the same, I think Soniqs got to find that physical game again. J-Russ was pretty quiet. He didn't have a lot of space, and Soniqs were forced to play laterally, which is exactly what benefited Frontline. So as we get underway in game number 3, both teams look for that match advantage, and it means everything, because this is your last match of today to move to the top 8.
And again, we start off 0-0 here, and I think for Soniqs to really ignite this offense, you're going to need the first goal, and Sathu, as soon as you call out for it, does so for the Soniqs.
Sathu will pick up that first goal, and Beastabonium, he tried to read that, and I should have switched to his perspective there. I was just looking at Sathu, but Beastabonium was looking at J-Russ and Sathu, and that can always be confusing when you have two cars that close together to find the actual read on what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the decision there is, how fast do you have to play this ball, knowing that a second attacker could come and bump you out of the way. So I think for Beastabonium, it was a tough play to make happen either way.
Sathu right on top of Delta on that play. But Frontline haven't really felt the heat from Sonic since game 1. Shock felt the heat from Beastabonium on the demo. No pass. It will only be J-Russ's ball. But that is the key difference right now. Delta to Andy for a booming clear, and Soniqs aren't ready for that pass boomer, if you will. Midfield still front lines. And it gets set up, but that touch, well, a couple of touches don't really do anything for Frontline. They're forced back on defense. Sathu actually getting in front, but again, the Soniqs rotation is too relaxed for these first man challenges that require a quick second man follow-up. Every time the Soniqs go for that particular play, or Sathu goes for an aggressive challenge as first man, nobody's ever ready for it, and so their play dies in midfield because of it.
And Frontline has done a great job of finding those gaps on the breakout from defense, where they're able to finally break free of the pressure. Soniqs just have massive holes in the midfield, like you pointed out, Jorby, and Frontline have really started to abuse it here in this game. You've seen it a couple times, but it's been happening throughout the series. Frontline have just been quicker to the ball down the field, and that's the game that I think Soniqs want to play more so than not, but right now, Frontline are doing it better.
They really are, and reading where Soniqs are going with the ball. Maybe a chance for Soniqs here. Sathu will only find a hard touch against Delta, but a sneaky shot from J-Russ is saved by Beastabonium. Delta will find Andy again. A lot of space, but Soniqs wanted to trap them in midfield. J-Russ has to make that touch if they want to create pressure. Sathu, he's going to have to do more work from that corner. The miss from Shock will not help Soniqs' efforts as Beastabonium gets in front of another challenge. But the ball's up for Sathu, and he wanted to pass to midfield, but nobody was there. Shock hard back, and J-Russ was still recovering from the first touch.
And that was better positioning from Shock, and you're seeing now the gaps really close up for Frontline to break out from their defense, and that's why we're seeing such a long extended stay on the defensive side, and J-Russ puts the second one away for Soniqs.
J-Russ first on the assist, and this time he'll pick up the goal. And it's just a nice dump bounce pass. And they caught Frontline a little too far back on the rotation. So nice little back pass from Shock. Not much too complicated about it, and we're back here. Soniqs, that's a good response from them despite some earlier gaffes that I felt they had on offense to create some real pressure. But this is a good turnaround, Corelli, for sure.
No, that last goal was one of their better ones. Great rally to keep that Frontline defense locked in. It was very tough for them to break out once they closed up those midfield gaps. I thought the positioning really cleaned up for Soniqs. Now, they got to do this a few more times here in this series, but I think so far, this is a much better game. But as soon as we start talking about it and how good Soniqs are, Delta comes roaring back for Frontline.
And it's a good one from Delta because he sees Shock, or not Shock, excuse me, saw nothing. From my back angle, Corelli, let me tell you what I saw. I thought Delta was avoiding Sathu, who was flying off the back wall, and he's like, yeah, he doesn't want to get demoed there. But then looking from his perspective, he never even saw Sathu on his screen, so completely erased my point. Don't look from too far back. Depth can be deceiving. Good from Frontline, though.
It does feel like pros have eyes on the back of their head, Jorby. I understand. They are all seeing a lot of times, but For Soniqs giving up a goal here, I don't think hurts them too much if they can hang on. Again, Frontline doing a great job of once they get onto offense, really making it tough for this Soniqs defense to play the ball into anywhere other than another Frontline player. And you're seeing that pressure start to build as that whiff might slow down the offense here. Safety trying to clear it away for Soniqs.
Now, Shock will find the point. J-Russ next up. He won't get to this challenge in time, but he'll find the read right off the first touch and the second touch, but the shot will not be forthcoming for Soniqs. Don't want to overcommit, but Andy's got the 1v1. Goodbye and no! Shock yet again on defense. He's been reliable pretty much every single time his number has been called. Shock, he's got J-Russ off the backboard. Statue gonna wait for J-Russ's multiple touches. Doesn't want to commit with two players in front though. Soniqs wasting a lot of time on the board. Counterattack from Frontline. Andy pops over one off the back wall. Beastabonium is challenged. Delta wants to keep the pressure up. Beastabonium cutting in as well, but there's no one available next. Andy's got to be fast, and he lost. Statue gets the goal, and that will all assure Soniqs' victory in Game 3.
I think Andy really felt like this was the last chance for Frontline, so he forced himself to go. He knew he was going to be a bit late. He was trying to get that block. With 8 seconds left, that's a tough decision for Andy to make because he was in such a no man's land of position. Do I let him have the hit? Will I be able to push down the field again with 8 seconds, even if I make the save? That was what was running through his head and unfortunately didn't pay off. Shock will get one more here for the Soniqs, but this game's all but over.
The wheels fell off at the end for Frontline, and it started promising. They won off the kickoff. They got a couple of shots out, but after those 2 shots in the first 10 seconds of the game, they registered 3 more for the entirety of Game 3. The offense completely shut down by Soniqs. A great return to form, and now 1 game away, Corelli, from finding a spot tomorrow.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the Soniqs for a second because I feel like I've been critical on them here in this series, and that's because I think the expectation is that they're going to win this series. I mean, on paper, they absolutely should, just with the caliber of team here, but and that's not to discredit what Frontline's done, but Soniqs, it has felt at times to be a bit disorganized, a bit panicky on defense. And again, that execution hadn't been there. In this game in particular, it's probably their best showing. I felt like everyone was on the same page when they got that offense going. And besides a few gaps here and there in the midfield, they did a much better job of slowing down this Frontline team on the transition and generating a lot more chances that were dangerous and ultimately led to the win.
And Shock picking up a lot of saves for his team there, 3, and there were 3 big ones that you were kind of alluding to at the end, Corelli. Shock, he had such a flashy start when he entered the RLCS. There were MVP talks about him, and then he and the rest of his team, they had fallen off. Everyone knows the story at this point. Everyone's been like, what happened to the Soniqs? Well, they've been slowly starting to figure it out. And if you're going to have a bunch of bad results in a row, you might as well do it in the offseason so that you get all of the kinks out of the armor, you polish up, and you look a lot better heading into RLCS. That's kind of the journey that Soniqs have been on. But because of that string of losses, they're in constant prove-it mode with not only fans, but also I feel with us, Corelli, just because they've put that expectation out there for us. So, I can't blame you too much for finding a lot of criticisms against this team, especially against Frontline, who don't have the same amount of experience that Soniqs do, if any of the experience that they do.
Right, and it's been an uptrend for the Soniqs as well. They've had 2 top 4 finishes in the grid and a top 8 finish as well. So I think for Soniqs right now, the upward trend points to a team that has a lot more potential than maybe what we've seen in some games. But overall, again, Soniqs leading the series, so you can't bang on them too much here. And this Frontline team definitely has been underestimated through the last 2 stages. You might have, like I said before, you might have been able to make a case for them on how they qualified in their first stage. They didn't have to play any RLCS teams. Most of the teams they played, they didn't end up qualifying. But now Frontline coming into stage 2, this is a team that you got to look out for. They're not just a pushover team. They are certainly here to compete, and they've looked pretty good here against the Soniqs team.
And Shock was your Season 9 MVP. He almost picked up the Soniqs goal right there. It started off of a save, and he ended up in that play for the entirety, back down to the Frontline half. But now things slowing down in Soniqs' corner. Fighting for a challenge win, we're Frontline, but everyone's forced back onto defense again. Beastabonium and Andy lost in the sauce, couldn't find each other or the ball. And now Soniqs get midfield because of it. It'll be Beastabonium. He looks for Delta far side, Andy in the middle, but Andy turned too far in, so he couldn't challenge J-Russ. But J-Russ, you know, that was a nice little touchdown for Andy.
Oh,
Stathu! Oh no! Andy, he lines it up and he says, Stathu, shoot this.
That was cute by Andy. I love the little 360, and boy, did he get Stathu there, and that one just pinches into the corner. Andy twirling around and knocking him down. A 1-goal lead for Frontline. It looked good.
It's the closest you'll get to a 360 no-scope in Rocket League. I like it from Andy. Andy has had a lot of, really, most of his touches in this match have been quality. Every time he's been behind the ball, very few times you go, that wasn't really the best touch from Andy. No, everything has been solid with intent. He looks great right now. But long 2 minutes left. It's Frontline challenging a couple of Sonic balls. J-Russ gonna look for Stathu in the corner. Not the best touch for Stathu, and they will get a hard clear to midfield. Shock, he wraps around Delta. He's got the boost off the back wall. J-Russ can't get to the ball in time. And now Beastabonium on the runaway. Stathu's challenge right into Shock. Slowing down just for now, but wait a minute. Breakaway to Stathu, broken up by Andy. Shock close by, Beastabonium on top. J-Russ gets back quickly and knocks the ball away from Frontline. That was dangerous for Soniqs.
Soniqs, they're using that sidewall a lot more, keeping a man up there. That's a tough whiff there from Stathu, but it does feel like Soniqs are trying to use each other a bit more as they've gotten into this series. And you've seen a couple times to be dangerous here just in this game, even though they haven't been able to convert off of it. That man on that wall using the sideline is just so crucial for any team, but for the Soniqs, generating that offense that they so crucially need so far in this series. Frontline have definitely given them trouble in the midfield, and Soniqs trying to fight back.
Soniqs, they're trying to, but they're struggling to even get off their back wall. Beastabonium ends up finding that read against Stathu. Shock, though, it's a quick clear. Delta was expecting a different touch, and now Soniqs got possession. Andy jumping, hopping like a rabbit in front of the box, hoping that he would jump into the right spot. The shot never came. Beastabonium next clear, but the net's open. J-Russ, it's a goal! Just like that, Soniqs tie the game.
And a great demolition here to open up the net. Stathu just takes out a Frontline player, and it's an open shot for J-Russ. Soniqs, that pressure finally paying off there. They're able to tie it back up.
So, Soniqs, here you go. Didn't let it get out of hand. But with this kickoff win, Frontline might let it get out of hand. Beastabonium popped against the post. Now Andy has to come in and get another solid clear, which he will. We could have another overtime, but it depends what happens on this counterattack. Well, the ball was hit right into Delta, but Shock, he's got Stathu. Stathu's got J-Russ, but it's denied by Andy. Shock is up for this. Free ball! Delta has the save. J-Russ now, next man up. Takes it slow off the ceiling. Blocked by Andy. It's by two defenders. Shock trying to buy some time. Stathu rotating behind him. Shock will get the first touch, but now on Frontline, it's Beastabonium for the first. Andy for the second. He stops it, and coming in, oh no, tying up. Beastabonium had a clear angle. Now J-Russ, he has Shock up in the air. Andy has the save. It's out to the side. Beastabonium spawns the savior for overtime. Here we go, Corelli.
I don't think any of the Frontline players took a breath in that final 30 seconds. It was all Soniqs. And give credit to Frontline, though, good defense, but you don't want to have your entire overtime feel like this. You have to break out from your end. And maybe it's Andy here on the breakaway trying to get a fake on J-Russ, and it will be cleared away.
Uh-oh, Shock's quick behind this ball. It had to be Delta. And that's going to buy a little bit of time. J-Russ slowing it back down in midfield. He'll pop it straight over Delta, but Beastabonium responds quickly. He's got to get back to this as the ball just hangs in front of the back wall. Shock waiting for this touchy backflip, actually called off by J-Russ. And things speeding up mile by mile. Can't really think of a good way to say that, but here's Beastabonium back over to Delta. And Stathu will take that ball off the back wall. Who breaks first? Will there be a creative passing play? Will it be a death by 1,000 boost steals? Or will it be an own goal? as so many overtimes have been in the RLCS. Well, maybe a counterattack here for J-Rust. Tried to find the read against Beastoponium, but it was just for shock. And oh, he bounced off 2 posts, and Beastoponium again! Saving Frontline for now, but they need another touch. Beast gives it to them, but Shock takes it back, and J-Rust dunks the top of the defender. That was Delta. Another massive clear attempt by Andy. What develops for Soniqs? They all sit back, and why not just sit back? Because Frontline have just given you the ball back every time they've had space on their own end. Here's Delta. Another hard ball. Frontline gonna wait for Soniqs, or maybe not. That's actually a huge misplay from J-Rust. It would have been worse. Beastoponium, though. A lot of hard touches when you feel like they could control Corelli.
Yeah.
Delta, nothing here.
Yeah, there's been a couple times, strangely enough, a Soniqs player whiffing the ball, but here's Frontline on the first attack that they've had in at least a couple minutes here in overtime. You're noticing a lot more just long clears high into space coming out from Frontline. Their boosts are very low when the Soniqs get on the attack, and it's really not giving any Frontline options outside of just booming the ball away. And that's why we're seeing the Soniqs have such an upper hand here in overtime.
Shock, he's looking for J-Rust again. Soniqs have been finding teammates in traffic. That could spell the end for Frontline if they can't get on the greater edge of these challenges. J-Rust swipes the ball away in midfield. Stathu takes it away from Delta. Now Shock, back to Stathu. He's got J-Rust, but Stathu kept it close against the corner. Still, though, the Soniqs press. Can they find the read against Delta? Shock does. J-Rust is there. Shock gonna be high off the back wall. Demo opens the net. Statue off the backboard. Shock! Goal! That is a Soniqs victory! You'll see them tomorrow!
Wow, after all that pressure, 2 minutes and 41 seconds, a demo and a ball received off the back wall. Delta had to make the initial save, but couldn't get back out to the goal line in the end. Soniqs take down a very strong Frontline team, and unfortunately they get sent home here today. We won't see them anymore, but man, this team has a lot of potential moving on into the next split.
I loved how they looked in that entire overtime, Corelli. Shock, 6 shots on goal in that, and just the flow. They started to find that rhythm, that flow state that you always see the top teams get into, the space stations and the G2s of the world. Soniqs were finding that flow against Frontline, and it's so hard to get in front of those challenges when the pass is just an inch away from you. This is truly a game of inches where, you know, you can be on top of somebody trying to block a pass, and that person will still get a clean touch out to his teammate if you are that far off the ball. That's how close some of those passes were for Soniqs, but they nailed each and every one of them. It was great pressure and also great in midfield where they could have gotten in trouble on their rotation, but J-Rust, Stathu, and Shock, all of them at different times, bailed their team out on defense. It was a good recovery. Frontline, I think we're going to see more of this team. I think there's a lot to like, but I think there's certainly more to develop, because things start to get lost when they feel the urgency and they get into that solo ball game where you're forcing the ball into the corner, relying on rebounds, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it felt like a weak start here from Soniqs. They really got things going at the end of this series. That gameplay that we saw from the Soniqs at the end here is how I would have expected Soniqs to play throughout that series. So for them, they're able to go home happy here today. And unfortunately for Frontline, they go home not so happy, but I think a very valiant effort here today in stage 2.
One more match to go, one more team to send to Sunday. Who joins the elites? We'll find out after the break.